Hello, my name is Jack Rutberg, and I am delighted to be able to share this exhibition, Patrick Graham, Notes from Ireland. The gallery has done a number of exhibitions of Patrick's work, rare as they are. However, every exhibition that we do, we come to sometimes even the same work, and it's as though we've never experienced them before. There's something very unique about Patrick Graham. I think much of it has to do with the kind of intimacy, not only of the work, but of the viewer's engagement of it. We're in a time where some of the most celebrated artists of contemporary art are those who are recognized by style. And style is, of course, an aspect of any great artist's work. However, it sometimes stays there to a degree. In Patrick Graham's work, we recognize it from paces away, but its virtues come in the intimacies and reflections not only of the work, but of ourselves in engaging it. I think he stands apart in that regard, frankly, in the history of art. He's often equated or compared to the works of artists of such power and poignancy as Anselm Kiefer, for example, or the other extreme, Egon Schiele, for vulnerability of his figures and the power that they portray. Cy Twombly, again, is an artist that someone is referred to from the kind of mark making that can be so extraordinary in his best works. But Graham does something far more than that. They're works that we are bewildered by, in a sense. We engage them, we don't even know why we're feeling what we do. There's a syncopation between marks and smudges that give us the rhythm, and yet we don't yet know the words. There's something rather remarkable about it. That was experienced just days ago as this exhibition has just opened. I saw a gentleman standing in front of a picture to realize suddenly that this man stood paralyzed in front of a drawing for minutes. We're in a time where museums talk about and people write about how quickly people move past an exhibition or past a work of art in an exhibition. Patrick Graham's works are that kind of engagement that mystifies the viewer. This particular individual I knew to be interested in color field painting, something completely non-objective. And here we have objects and references and words that mystify the viewer in a way that reveals an intimacy that we seldom experience. I believe really distinguishes Patrick Graham unique in contemporary art. They're bold, they're strong, they're poetic, they make references to real things, and yet we don't know why we're experiencing what we do. We've talked a great deal about Patrick Graham and the mystery of these masterful works and the extraordinary experience we have and where they come from. To understand Patrick Graham's work, one has to know, or at least it certainly helps to know, its origins. Ireland was a place that had no real history in terms of personalistic expression in art. Patrick was a prodigy. As a young boy, if he found a piece of plaster and started drawing something on a wall or something, a crowd would gather. This was in the Midlands of Ireland, in Mullingar, and this brilliant young boy hadn't studied art. This was just a natural talent that was recognized by others. But Ireland was a very poor country at the time, and its history goes back centuries. When the Irish were oppressed by the British, they were forbidden to express their own culture, a very rich culture. It goes back to Celtic times where literature and poetry and song and great traditions. You think of the great illustrated manuscripts. The Book of Kells is, of course, one that everyone knows. But in that time of oppression, there was only one thing that the Irish were able to embrace that separated them from their oppressors. And that is that they were allowed to embrace and maintain their religion. Catholicism was the thing that separated them from the British occupiers. And the church became incredibly powerful, all-powerful. Substantial power can suffocate as well as illuminate. That became the dark side of Irish experience. Privately, the Irish celebrated their culture, but could not do so at the risk of their own lives to do it publicly. So the church was so all-empowering that the notions of personal expression never really evolved. It was dealt with poetically, in literature, through metaphor, and Ireland was somehow isolated from the development of Western Europe in most ways that were ephemeral. As a young boy, was so celebrated among those that had seen his works that he was actually winning prizes that he knew nothing about. People were submitting his drawings to competition in this rather naive time. At the age of 13, he was awarded a scholarship to the National College of Art in Dublin. Now, Patrick probably never had been to Dublin, and indeed was too young to attend, of course. But at 16 was the youngest person to ever be admitted to the National College. At that time, everyone was awed by this remarkable young boy's talents, developed a following that included his fellow students and his professors. He was winning prizes, but all in all, the education he received had only to do with the academic restrictions of the old masters, not about free expression. At the time, there was not even a book in the library on Picasso, on modern art. These were not sensibilities that existed yet. The celebration of his talents proved entertaining for a while, but this young, repressed young fellow, that adulation was a burden that few of us could actually endure with grace. In the end, Patrick's introduction to modern art by way of one small exhibition of the works of Émile Nolde that came to Dublin for some reason was something that created trauma more than enlightenment. At first, he railed against the works, knew that this was against everything he was taught. It had nothing to do with that kind of academic discipline. But Patrick suddenly came to learn that this held truth. There was something beyond the narrative academic genius of the great old masters. The old masters created these works really out of devotion, a profound devotion, I would say. But now we were talking about a time that had nothing to do with those eras, and suddenly Patrick was introduced to the concept of something deeper. And this became a tremendous battle within. And the escape from that battle, the battle against academia, against this facility that he came to regard as an unearned gift, drove him to dark places. And alcohol proved to be the escape. I had the good fortune of being the curator of the Galway Arts Festival, bringing exhibitions to them each year. And while Patrick Graham thinks that he hadn't created art for a great many years, in my travels to Ireland, I'd be meeting people and they'd say, I have a work by Patty. I got this Patrick Graham, it was a long time ago. I think those were the dark years when Patrick thinks he hadn't been making art, but perhaps gave a drawing every now and then. Who knows, it may have been in the pub. In any case, there were these many years that Patrick thought he had never made art. And that battle between the academy and the notions of possibilities was too great, and those dark years really took him to very, very dark places. Coming out of all of that really happened when Patrick tried desperately to go beyond his alcoholism and placed himself in hospital. And in hospital, he hadn't really drawn all these years by his thinking, but there was a pad and pencil next to him for his writing that he used to do. And suddenly, spontaneously, he picked up this pencil and started drawing a patient that was sitting near him. And he drew a perfect likeness to this individual who wasn't able to communicate, but in any case, Patrick showed him the drawing. No reaction whatsoever, none whatsoever. And Patrick, while making that drawing, the ego was somehow coming up that this kid still got it sort of scenario. But with the absence of a reaction, he realized, why should this man react to something that he sees every day? This is the empty facility that placed Patrick in that situation. And in working in this drawing, he then took pencil and drew into it forcefully, feeling the kind of energy and reaction with every stroke. That was the beginning, as many would say in Ireland, was the birth of modern art in Ireland. There were other, of course, there were artists that traveled the continent and so forth, but indeed that was the beginning, and Patrick's first exhibition proved historic. In 1974, following that episode, was an exhibition entitled Notes from a Mental Hospital and Other Love Stories. And that is a moment that art historians, fellow artists, really credit with the birth of individual expression in Ireland in art. I'm often asked, how in the world did Patrick Graham's work be introduced to Los Angeles, to me? It's a wonderful story because it's also indicative of how the work can capture one. I was approached in 1987 or 86 by a dealer, an art dealer in Dublin, who represented Patrick Graham's work at the time. She said to me, I'd really love to introduce you to some artists that we thought would be interesting to bring to America. And Vincent Price, the actor Vincent Price, said that you're the man to see. Well, Vincent had been a very generous, kind friend to the gallery, and because of his, I wanted to show courtesy to Vincent more than anything. The last thing I wanted to really engage at that point was, polite sheep in the landscape, what I equated with Irish art. The story was that Vincent Price, who will surprise most, was an art historian. Acting was the vehicle to his passion, which was art. He was Yale trained. Following that, he went off to the Courtauld in London. We're talking about a man so steeped in art, I can count with one hand, and over these decades, the people that I've met with the same conviction, passion, and integrity in collecting art. And championing art, I should say. There's a history worthy here of a video in and of itself. Well, this dealer came to me and she brought these 4 Irish artists in a portfolio. And I have to say, much like what happens in this gallery today, I looked at these works. All 4 artists were quite extraordinary, I'd say. But there was one that captured my interest. I didn't know if I liked them. I didn't understand what I was experiencing, but I wanted to learn more. And that was the beginning of me, of Jack Rutberg Fine Arts, becoming the international representative of Patrick Graham. Over these many years of presenting Patrick's works, rare as that was, The gallery has been in existence for nearly 50 years, so we've done a number of exhibitions, and I've been responsible or engaged with circulating museum shows as well. The experience is always the same as the first time. One wonders where this feeling comes from. These are works where marks and smudges have the syncopation of music. We don't question it, and we don't understand why we feel the way we do. But they reveal a tenderness, a power, a vulnerability that impacts people. And I'll end with just expressing one occasion that happened in the gallery. I noticed that there was a collector, a couple actually, that came into the gallery. They were there for quite a long time, and out of courtesy, I wanted to come down and say hello. And I walked into the back gallery and I saw this couple. The gentleman was in the far corner, but I didn't see the woman. Then I walked in further and she was there to the right. I welcomed her and she turns around and tears were rolling down her face. The mascara she was quite embarrassed about it all. She says, "Jack, what's happening here?" And I had no idea what she was talking about. She says, I said, "Well, what happened?" I thought perhaps she fell or someone said something. She said, "I look at this work and I'm crying and I don't know why." And I said, "Well, Phyllis, you go to museums, you come to this gallery over the years, you've done this your whole life. Has this ever happened to you before?" And she said, "No." And I said, "Well, Phyllis, you've been touched. And that's something that so seldom we are benefiting from, even with the people that we're intimate with." And I think that underscores the kind of experience of why someone is frozen in front of a drawing for more time than they ever believed they could be. In this work from the early 80s, one might equate it with the style of the neo-expressionists, which really has its origins in Germany and adopted in New York, in America. Patrick Graham's works really are incidental to that movement, that style. Graham has dug into the Irish turf so deeply, and the coloration, the dark paintings that you see of that period really have more to do with the soil of Ireland, which has its own magical properties. And if there is a cliche that I've ever invented, I'd say that it is that Patrick Graham has dug through the Irish turf so deeply that he's come out the other side. Because indeed, when his works were shown from everywhere from Japan to particularly in America in our exhibitions, the reaction to his works were more profound, as Ireland was still not yet able to receive these kinds of works of art. And out of these dark paintings come remarkable color and force of figure and possibilities. And I'll not go into the references and so forth, but they are about the choices of the journey. In this extraordinary painting by Patrick Graham, we see the works with lettering on the top. The lark in the morning, she rises off her nest and comes home in the evening with dew upon her breasts. A very famous pub song in Ireland. People know this song. For Patrick, this became symbolic of something else, about the emergence and the passage of time and emergence of womanhood. We see shrouds. Shrouds are always present in Patrick Graham's works, or often present, from swaddling cloths to the memorial shrouds that one sees in passing coffins. But through all of this, there's even this remarkable image of the crucifixion here. But on close examination, it's the vaginal form that's opening up in the emergence of womanhood, because in Ireland, the notions of sexual reference were impossible. And in this time, things have emerged into a realm where subjects like that could be absorbed and celebrated. It was brought up to me in the opening of our exhibition, where there was a James Joyce scholar here, that James Joyce's novels were virtually impossible to find in Ireland in the 1960s. So strong was the censorship of modern sensibilities that we can parse out and understand and argue today. We see at the top of this painting written, "Somewhere Jerusalem." This painting was done nearly 20 years ago, and it only underscores how timeless Patrick Graham's works are. They are not historic paintings, they're not dealing with a specific narrative, but something that is constantly unfolding. Today, the painting may take on other meaning, but in fact, it's really a prayer, something holy, something where everyone is searching for their own Jerusalem. And these various lines all make reference to prayers as though they were left in the shrines that you'll find throughout Ireland, with little notes and prayers and hopes, much the same as one would see in the Wailing Wall in Jerusalem. So many of the works in this exhibition were included in a museum touring exhibition that ended in my gallery on La Brea Avenue at the time. These are complex works, and without going into details about all of them, we see references that unfold. But if you wish to learn more, I really encourage you to view the video that is seen on our website at jackrutbergfinearts.com's video page, and you'll see that video accompanied by the one you're viewing now.